use this video now to switch that mindset, okay, and you'll see when we get to the programming section how we can bring things together so it's not exactly like pre-season, but you're still making progress, which is the point of the competitive season rugby, being ready for rugby, and then like not going a whole year to physically develop.
Hey guys, welcome to the channel. It's Fraser here, strength and conditioning coach for BLA Rugby Club, and I'm also online at rugbystrengthandconditioning.com. So today we're going to be deconstructing the competitive season in rugby. We're going to be pulling it apart and understanding where we can push, where we can pull to make physical adaptations throughout the year and get better year on year on year, as well as being ready every Saturday or Sunday or game day whenever you play. In this video we'll talk about a quadrant system and how you can organise your training based on your training age, and exactly what style of programming is best for you. So you're going to put yourself in a group and then decide at the end of this video, okay, I need to use this program or this program. It will all make sense at the end of the video, guys, and as ever you will have a 6-week program that you can take away and implement. I just want to make sure you have the full context to it so that you can go and make it as successful as possible and get the same results that my guys are getting here at Biella, which is progress year on year, but also being ready for game day, which is obviously crucial when you're in the competitive season. Guys, like I said, we're going to be deconstructing the competitive season, so please do view this as much more of a guide and a reference that you can come back to, much like my pre-season for rugby video. Like that video, I would fully encourage you to take notes, whether it be old school or on the computer or screenshots, however it is that you remember the information, because it's unapologetically long, this video, because there's so much that I want to get across so that you can implement your program and make it a real success. We'll be discussing some of the success stories that we have here at BLA Rugby. We'll be problem solving some of the things that can go wrong in season, and we'll be discussing everything from primers to warm-ups to post-match recovery. All right, so buckle up, stay tuned, like the video, and let's get into the detail. Before we go any further, let's look at some of the common problems that can occur during the competitive season. This way we can resolve them now, we can see them coming, be on the front foot, make sure that they're not a problem for us going forward, and we can make progress during the season. This is more of a common error than a problem per se, but it can be a problem if you have that mindset. So use this video now to switch that mindset, okay, and you'll see when we get to the programming section how we can bring things together so it's not exactly like pre-season, but you're still making progress, which is the point of the competitive season rugby, being ready for rugby, and then like not going a whole year to physically develop. That would be crazy. When we talk about the quadrant system, there are some players that don't need to be physically developed because they're at the end of their playing career. They're maybe just maintaining all the hard work they've done for the last 10 years. That's a different story, all right? For the most part of people watching this video, you're going to be in category 1, 2, or 3. We'll get there in a second. So understanding the rugby plan, not just for 1 week, but a block of weeks, is going to allow you to develop a physical development plan. Whatever is missing from rugby in terms of physical capacity, you can add in the warm-up or at the cool down or on a separate day. So it might be the case that Tuesdays for you are long, slow running with the ball. There's lots of running volume in there. So you know that you need to get a speed stimulus in on another day because that's going to be more of your longer running days, for example, okay? It might be that Thursday is more of a technical day, strategy day, so it's a perfect spot for you to put in a 20-minute speed session at the start of the session, for example. I've got some ideas for you when we get into the programming section, so stay tuned for that. But suffice to say, the more you can anticipate what's going on in the rugby side of things, the better you can manage yourself physically to ensure that you're maintaining speed or fitness or whatever quality it is that needs to be maintained or developed for you. So I've called this readiness to train. We could also slide it under the category of post-match recovery. Now they are two separate things, but they're definitely linked. So it's really important that you arrive at every training session as best you can mentally, physically, all right? I know life is tough sometimes and we're not robots, okay? But having a process can really help. It starts with your post-match recovery process. I'm going to leave here a bunch of things that you can try if you don't have a process already. It's important that there's the immediate post-match window, okay, that you're getting the right nutrients, okay, and of course there's things that are just goes without saying, ensuring you have adequate sleep, etc. But also game day +1, it's important that you do something that helps recovery. All right, think about this. The quicker that you can recover, the quicker you can switch gears into performance mode again. So you have your game of rugby, you have to recover from the game of rugby. How long does that take you? 7 days, 5 days, 2 days, 24 hours? The quicker that you can recover, you can switch gears into performance training. The quicker you can switch into performance training, the more time you're going to have to put load through your body week on week, month on month, year on year. And that accumulation effect makes a big difference in not only maintaining strength and power and speed, but also developing it so that you come out at the end of the season better. So there's many ways you can objectively assess your readiness to train. All right, but I think I'll save that for another video. If you're interested, leave a comment in the comment section, let me know, because I think as a person that's watching this video, as an athlete that might be watching this, you'll know yourself, like how ready you feel to train or not. I would just encourage you to have a process before you train, whether that's having a coffee or there's like a pre-workout meal that you have at a certain time, okay, and then coming in and nailing a really good warm-up before you go on and do whatever it is you have to do, your weights, your sprints, or your rugby session. Having a process is really important. So the last problem, or more of a common error, is just remember that to keep the main thing, right? So rugby is the main thing. Be ready for rugby, be available for rugby. Do what you have to do in order to achieve those two objectives. Develop your technique. Everything is built around rugby because you're a rugby player. So you can sacrifice a bit of here and there in the gym, and you'll need to in order to be ready for rugby. Now, there are athletes that will need to think long term. Perhaps you're an age grade athlete and you know the business end of the season is that sort of January through to April, same with playoffs, etc. for senior teams. So you have to bear that in mind and box clever when it comes to loading and unloading, which we'll get into in the programming section. But bear in mind, like maybe you can drop that accessory exercise because you've got your strength stimulus and now you're short in time, you need to get out to the field. So just an example, keep the main thing, and of course the main thing is rugby. So let me give you two real world examples from my guys this season and how they got better, and that will allow you to sort of understand the rationale behind certain programming decisions which we're going to go on to talk about. The first example would be Dario. Now, Dario's not a young rugby player. I'm sure he won't mind me saying he's seen a season or two, okay? And he's in that third quadrant of what we'll talk about in a second, which makes it harder for him to get adaptations, or potentially harder to get adaptations during the season, because not only is he a little bit further along in the rugby journey and he has a higher training age, he's also someone that is heavily involved in every game and heavily involved in training. So he has a lot of high-speed running volume, he has a lot of total distance in general, and of course he has a lot of contact involvement. Now in the case of Dario, all we had to do was make sure that we pinpointed what physical attribute we could develop during the season and what wouldn't take away from him being ready for the game. So for example, if we said, all right, we really need you to get stronger in the lower body. Do we? Why? First of all, the volume that we would have to do in order to achieve that would then come at the sacrifice of rugby and running speed, etc. And two, his lower body strength is already okay, so you know, why do that? Instead, we acknowledged his running volume and the things that he's doing on the pitch, okay? Maintained strength and power in the lower body, which is simple with one session a week, low volume, all right? And we targeted upper body strength, okay? We did that twice a week with medium to high volume at the start of the week, all right? And then at the end of the week, much lower volume, high intensity, directly before he's involved in a rugby game. In doing so and modifying the intensities, as we'll see in a second when we get to the program, he's able to do a 5 kilogram PB on his pin press. Now here at Biella, when you do a 5 kilogram PB on your pin press, once we cycle in bench press, I'm sure that he will do the same there. Why is that important for rugby? Like, who cares about a 5 kilogram increase on your bench press in rugby? It doesn't make a difference. Does it not? It does. If you add that up year on year, you're getting globally stronger. We'll talk about training transfer near the end of this video. And I'm not saying that oh my goodness, 5 kilograms on your bench press makes you a better rugby player. What I am saying is to make physical developments during the rugby season can be challenging, but it's definitely possible. And if you're a younger player, or if you just have the desire to change and constantly improve, there's definitely things you can do if you box clever and choose what area you can physically develop during the season. So another example of physical development during the competitive season in a busy rugby period would be Ayub. Now his target was getting faster, his linear speed. He's already strong in the lower body, we're working on the upper body, and he's a younger player, all right? So that needs to happen during the season with similar methods that I mentioned with Dario, but his main focus, his main physical priority out with the rugby was making sure that he's the fastest guy in his role as a back row player. It's really good to get him from the 1.7s in his acceleration down into the 1.69s, down into the 1.65s. And I'm sure the last 3 weeks of this year, given the fact he's done a lot of strength work with plyos, his acceleration is going to be down at that he's going to break the 1.65 10 meter barrier, I'm sure. If it's not tonight, at the time of making this video, it will be in the next 3 weeks. And I'll make sure I document that so you can follow me on Instagram, or I'll put it on one of my shorts. Suffice to say, whatever you are targeting, whether it's upper body strength like Dario, or whether it's linear speed like Ayub, your program obviously needs to be geared towards that. Rugby is a tough sport, all right? There's peaks and troughs, there's highs and lows. You have to remain fluid with the programming, but it's absolutely possible to make physical adaptations in the rugby season. Whatever those physical adaptations might be, identifying them and prioritizing them is step one. So guys, if you're new to the channel, just very quickly about me, I've been doing this for a while now. In fact, let me share with you a really embarrassing video of when I was a personal trainer at Virgin Active, fresh-faced, 21 years old, just a kid with a dream, helping people as best as I could back then. That was many years ago, and obviously I've specialised in working with rugby players since then, and I'm a strength and conditioning coach. In fact, for the last 9 years, I've been specialising working with rugby players. So the information we're about to get into isn't just something that's come up off the top of my head. It's been years and years of practice, development, learning and implementing and reviewing to make sure that I have the best stuff for my guys and we get success year on year, which obviously I'm now sharing with you. It goes without saying that there are so many influences that I've had over the years, too many names to mention. I will put some further reading and information in the video description, so make sure you check out that. Alright guys, with all that being said, let's go and have a look at the quadrant system and the programming that we're going to use in season. So straight to the good stuff guys, and this is the quadrant system that I was telling you about from Ashley Jones. Now he uses this quadrant system as a way to manage players and bring individualisation into a program. So with the more exposure you have to training, the higher your training age, the more responsibility you can then take and understand how your body reacts to different stimuli and methods, etc, etc. It's worth saying that I have guys that are 30 years old that are still in box 2, not because they're not progressive and not strong, quite the opposite. It's just that they're busy, they might be dads, they have to work, and they don't really want to think too much about the training process. They like it, they enjoy it, they say, Fraser, I trust you man, what do I need to do? I'll be like, here's one option, here's two options, which do you prefer? Good, we need a strength stimulus, this is the 6-week program, this is what you need to do, and they'll be very happy with that. So the point of me saying this is, yes, this is one way that you can think about your programming, but it can be fluid and dynamic, okay? I've put some training ages around it just to make it easier to understand here and now. With that being said, let's go to the first box in the top left corner, okay? That's when you've been exposed to 1 or 2 years of structured training, not just making it up training, but structured training, okay? There isn't any programming decisions to be made other than, you know, you're following progressive overload, and of course there might be check-ins before the sessions, but you follow it to the letter, all right? Follow progressive overload. It's really, really simple. Ask questions, learn, and for me, guys, this is where, and we'll see in a second, like good old-fashioned block periodization works really, really well. It is here that you want to take the low-hanging fruit. There's often temptation for young guys and girls to be like, oh, you know, I saw the superstar that is professional or plays international rugby and they're doing this on Instagram or whatever. Like, that might be really appropriate for them who have 8 years of training, but you can get the gains that you need to make by following a really simple process, which I'll show you in a second. It's really simple. We won't spend too much time on it because it's simple. More important there in that category, that you have a really good coach, All right, so find a local coach, work with a local coach, because that's probably more important than the actual programming. The programming is really simple at that stage. It's just a matter of consistency, nailing the technique and following progressive overload. So your year might look exactly like this. You got an off season, a pre-season, and a long competitive season, which I've split into two, and a transition. Okay, within those periods, you're going to have a focus, and it's just going to be a sole focus when it comes to the gym side of things, such as hypertrophy, strength, strength and power, or power. All right, strength should kind of be the theme. So even though you're doing hypertrophy work, your 1 RM will increase. All right, it's just you might not get down to the low reps until, you know, December. You might be using 3s depending on your training age, etc. Okay, you can see that there's a fitness emphasis, and when you're in season, hopefully that's coming mostly from your rugby, but we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end because that's applicable for every level of athlete, okay? And then of course you can see we go from linear acceleration and change of direction to then a focus on linear acceleration and agility, absolute speed and evasiveness, and that's something we can talk about again a little bit later when we get into the details. It's just to give you an overview and broad strokes of how it might look like and how simple it can be at the start when you're at your first 2 years of training. So I wasn't lying when I said it was really simple. Let's look at the overview. All right, I've done this in 3-week blocks, but it's just good old-fashioned linear periodization. All right, we've got 3 sets of 12 for 3 weeks going into 3 sets of 10 without even prescribing necessarily intensities. Now, after 1 year of training, you might want to prescribe intensities. Maybe there's a 1 RM known, which is always dynamic when you're working with young players, but it might be 3 times 12 at 60% to start with. Working backwards, if it's the first 6 months in the gym, then 3 sets of 15 or 3 sets of 12 here, it would just be a case of like doing easy set for 12. Do you feel like you could have done 20? Yeah, 18, 20, okay, fine. Do a medium set, cool. Do you feel like you could have done 15 there? I think you could have. Your technique was good and you were looking good. Yeah, good, okay. Now I want you to choose a weight where 12 is like really, really hard. Like you might not even make it to 12, but let's try. All right, the technique needs to be good. You can use 200 kilograms or you can use 20 kilograms, I don't care. But the technique needs to remain the exact same because you did it really well in the first 2 sets. Okay, that's how you find out the working weight, all right? And you can step load the same way on week 2 and week 3, all right? Or you might plateau load and say, okay, you did 70 kilograms with your squat on your last set of 12, and that was tough, that was a hard working set. Next week I want to do 3 sets of 12 with 65 kilograms. And if it looks easy at set 2, maybe we'll hit 70 again, maybe even 75. Let's see how you go. So that's why it's important to work with a coach that's keeping an eye on you, because they'll be able to help you, make those decisions and maybe save you if you're a little bit ambitious and maybe push you if you're, holding back a little bit. So really, really simple overview there, and you can do the same in week 4 to 6. All right. Let's go into the detail a little bit and look at Monday, for example. So we have a Monday, Wednesday and Friday split. Why are we training on Friday before a game? Listen, you just need to get used to that. Like if you're an international rugby player, if you make it to that level, you're going to be having a session like the day before you play, probably, captain's run, etc. You're in a position where you want to be consistent and make changes, so that's a really good way to do it. I'm assuming that Tuesday and Thursday you have rugby, or perhaps other days, but doing a lifting session on Friday before you train when you're young, like you'll recover if you do the right things, eat right, sleep well, etc. It might be the case, however, as you get closer to sort of the more selection time of the season, like January and whatnot, maybe you drop down to 2 sessions a week. Again, something to speak to your coach about. But in this particular program, I've gone Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's something I've used here at Biella. It's something that I've used with Scotland under 18s and under 20s, even when they're in their club fixtures. Okay, not the day before a big game, but like their club fixtures. So it works really well. Anyways, let's go back to Monday. Okay, very simple programming, and there's nothing in there that will throw you, I don't think. So back squats, military press, just big compound movements with some bodyweight stuff at the end. Again, this is just for information purposes. Please do work with a coach if you're in your sort of infancy of training, if you like. All right, same thing on Wednesday. It's all whole body lifting, okay? And yeah, there's nothing in there that's particularly fancy, let's say, and we'll get into the more fancy stuff, if I can use that term, as we progress through the programming. And same thing on Friday. There's actually a lower body lift in there on Friday because we know that we need to build strong legs. One of the ways that we can do that is by squatting and lifting twice a week. All right, so that's why we've got front squats in there on the Friday before a game. Bear in mind everything that I said previously, okay? And then more upper body stuff. That'll be quicker to recover there. So if you did a full leg session on Friday, whereas with squats and lunges and SRDL and all that stuff, that might not be appropriate before a game, but a good old couple of sets of front squats will keep you honest, keep you developing, and like I said, once you come out those club fixtures or school fixtures, you can then kind of go into thinking about twice a week, or maybe you've developed a certain point of strength and you're wanted, to move on to another attribute. If you're interested in like strength standards and how strong you can be and how strong you might want to be depending on your level, check out my video that I'm linking here. That will give you some insight into strength standards for rugby. So let's move on to the top right box, and you have a little bit more say in your training journey. Now in Ash Jones's quadrant, he suggests that we bring in exercise selection. I've also obviously tried and used this for a number of years, and I like it. It makes sense. Players tend to have, after a period of time, and they tend to know, okay, yeah, this works well for me. I feel like I can produce as much power as I need to, or whatever. It's not to say that you cannot, learn new skills. Like you can learn the snatch, you can learn the power clean and use that as peak power. Perhaps you haven't been exposed to it in the first 2 years, but it does just start to allow for options, and that's never a bad thing when you're trying to get athletes to take responsibility for their program. It's in this period as well that programming can become a little bit more complicated. We'll break it down and it'll be really simple, but complicated but simple. But I'll show you how there's a little bit more layers to it, and there's a little bit more thought that needs to go into it than say the first 6 months of training or the first year of training, okay? Remember, the timings here are dynamic, okay? So it doesn't have to be rigid, but it's just to give you an example that there can be more layers in something like this, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, so the bottom left corner, we've got even more responsibility. We've got exercise selection, perhaps methods. All right, I'll throw up a methods chart here so you can just see there's various ways to get the strength stimulus and development you require, or the power stimulus, or the hypertrophy stimulus, or the speed stimulus, etc. So there's so many different methods you can use, and after a period of time, you'll have been exposed to probably a fair amount of them, and you might look back over your training journey and go, do you know what? When I was following this wave method of loading, that seemed to work best for me. I got really good results. Now there might be a number of factors that go into that, but I think I want to try that when it comes to our main strength lift raiser. Okay, no problem. Like, good, I'm glad that you're thinking that. Let's try it. I'm sure it'll work for you. So in that last box, you almost have full responsibility of everything, including how often you're actually going to train. That then leads us on to the conversation of also primers that might be useful for you. I mean, primers you can use whenever, really, whatever training age it is. But the further you go into the journey, the more you're going to be aware of how your body responds to things and how many sessions a week you need to develop or just maintain what you need to maintain to be good for the game on Saturday or Sunday. Okay guys, so let's go into category 2, and we'll go into good detail here because I think most people, that's kind of appropriate for them that are watching this video. So, we'll go into detail. Let's look at the broad strokes first. We've got the same setup, a typical rugby setup of off-season, pre-season, competitive season 1 and 2. It's the same season, but we just split it up for Christmas. Then transition, all right? We've got general prep, specific prep. You'll notice, however, that there are dual focuses, all right? And there's strength and hypertrophy pre-season, strength and power, power and strength, okay? So there's a little bit more strength and power emphasis because the player has gone through a bit of a training journey. Now, that's not to say that you can't focus on hypertrophy if that's the adaptation that you really need and that's the feedback that you've had and you know that for sure, all right? That's something that we talk about in my pre-season for rugby video. It's good to categorize yourself based on adaptations, but if we're looking at general strokes here and you need to develop strength and power, then this program has a basis for this program. Allows you to do that, and obviously there's a base of strength and hypertrophy at the start. As ever, we'll talk about fitness a little bit later because that's applicable to everyone. Same thing with the speed, agility and quickness, okay, so let's look at the detail now. You can see straight off the bat that this is a little bit more there's more layers to this, let's say, than the previous program, and this is an example of a weekly undulating program. Okay, so the intensity changes from week to week. Those of you that are well versed in S&C will notice the influence of Dan Baker's wave loading. That's because I use it and it works really well. So that's why that's there. Tried and tested by him many years ago, and also, you know, I'm using it now and have used it for a number of years. So again, nothing complicated. There is a base load on week 1, okay, and you'll notice that things are different for strength and power. Okay, that's really important that you're not using the same intensities. It just doesn't work the same. All right. You'll notice that week 3 is a neuro week. It's like, that's your hard week in terms of high intensity, and same as week 6. Okay, so that's the kind of the pattern that we follow here. I use 1RM percentage-based training prescriptions, all right, but stay fluid within that, like I said at the very start. Okay, it depends how you're feeling like on that day. The problem with 1RM percentage prescription training is that, you know, your 1RM might fluctuate from day to day. So you could come into the gym one day and do a 200 squat, and then like the next day you might not sleep well, or something in life has stressed you out, okay, and you might only get like 185, so therefore your 70% is different. That being said, it gives you a good guide. For example, in my programming online, there's a reference as to reps in reserve in relation to the percentage that you're using. So for example, 5 reps at 85% would be like a 5 RM for a lot of people. Like some people might get 6 with that. Obviously, it depends on the person, but like nobody's loading 85% and getting 10 reps. That's impossible, or you're a real beginner. Okay, so the percentage-based prescription is a guide. It's a very useful guide. It works really well, but do use reps in reserve and effort to understand, okay, you know, this should be a heavy week, week 3, that should be near maximum, and the same in week 6. But week 1 should be hard work, but there should be like 1 rep in reserve at the end set if we account for accumulation fatigue. So 8 with 70%, for example, you might think, yeah, could have done 12 on set 1. Take a good rest, maybe on set 2, yeah, could have done 10. Maybe in set 3, you're like, that was spot on the money, 70% for 8 there. Again, it depends on how you feel, and you know, this is for people that have gone through a bit of a training process before, so they're kind of aware of the training prescription process. So here you can see that we have got a lower body strength and power day on game day +2, okay? Make sure you're recovering. I've said that at the start, all right? And it's good to get the strength stimulus in early in the week. Set yourself up for the week ahead, all right? We've got mid-thigh pulls. We're using obviously contrast training methods there. I won't get into the details on exactly every single exercise. Something that you can watch in my shorts. Pretty much all these exercises are in my shorts feed, okay? Or maybe I'll do, if you've seen a video of mine, top 10 strength exercises, top 10 power exercises, maybe I need to do a part 2 there. All right, game day -4, Tuesday, we've got an upper body session, good old fashioned upper body session, making sure we're developing strength there, all right? On Tuesday, we've gone for push press following the strength protocol. So make a note of that, because on Friday, we've gone down for push press following the power protocol. All right, so we're saving much more on the tank and focusing more on barbell velocity on the Friday after doing a strength lift on pin press. All right, so then moving on to Friday, and guys, I should note, I usually put trunk work at the start of the session. So the quality is there and it gets you ready for the session. Obviously, you need to make sure you're doing a good warm-up, all right, an individual warm-up. If you need ideas, click on that video there. Okay, and this is where a bit of selection comes in. So yeah, there's more layers to this, but we've got on Friday like power clean from blocks or trap bar jumps. Follow the loading pattern above, and you can kind of decide what works best for you in that instance. Same on the lower body lift, like what makes you feel better? Where can you load better? Like the back squat, the front squat, the trap bar deadlift. In season, it's about, you know, maintaining strength, developing it where we can, not too fussed at this level. Like we said, going back to that quadrant system, what exercise we use to do that. Okay, so going back to Friday, sorry, I'm jumping around here. We've got basically lower body power and upper body strength, all right? Again, primers we'll talk about in a second when we go into another category. This is a really good split. We've used it very successfully here at Biella, and I've used it to prepare under 20 athletes for World Cups, for example. So yeah, another way to organise training, not the only way, but another way that works really well. As for the on-field acceleration and agility, again, depends what's going on in rugby. I'll show you another way to organise training in a second, but this could be at the start of a rugby session, depending on your time commitment. It could be a separate session, so it might be that you do your on-field agility and acceleration work like at the very Monday morning, okay, and then you've got a lower body lift on Monday evening. Again, that depends on your time commitment, okay. Suffice to say, I've designed it in such a way here on this YouTube video that you can put this in as a warm-up. Let's say like you do your warm-up and then you do this and you go into a technical rugby session. So we've got wall drives, we've got 10-meter sled drives with varying load of 20 to 10% of your body weight. Now there is a way to work out the exact correct weight that you can put on a sled. I might do a video on resisted sled sprints separately, okay, because we could talk 10 minutes about that, and we use it a lot and we get great results with it. Suffice to say, there we're looking for good posture, okay, so we're looking for good trunk lean, we're looking for good shin angles, and we're looking for max speed. The load that you use will determine obviously the time that you can complete 10 meters, but it's not so much about that. It's about max intent, maximizing force output there, and being as fast as you can. And the sled helps you arrive at postures that we would like to see when you're doing your free 10-meter sprints, okay? Then you might go into a 10-meter cut drill and you have to react to a coach, so there's an agility element to that. You can see that on the video that I did, agility for rugby, if you haven't seen it already. That's just an example. Your coach might have other drills. So you might go through your acceleration stuff, and then your coach might say, well, we've got this and this in rugby, so we'll get there. Excellent. That's amazing. Brilliant. So just another example, guys, of what a program can look like, what intensity and volume you can follow if you're in that second category. Obviously, the competitive season isn't just 6 weeks long, but I wanted to give you a real good example and something you can go away and try and have experience with and get results from, okay? If you want a 12-week program, so this program that I've shown you here, and the 6 weeks that progress on from that, then you can go to rugbystrengthandconditioning.com and you'll find an in-season strength and conditioning program there, which follows the same split on these first 6 weeks, okay? So the category 2 player, and it just progresses on there from different moves. Like we bring in more split jerks and use different training methodologies than obviously the first 1 to 6 weeks. Let's go back and talk about fitness. That's applicable to everyone, and it should be being maintained with your rugby sessions, right? If your rugby sessions are solely technical and tactical and there isn't a lot of running volume in there, then you can absolutely do top-ups. There's lots of ideas that you can do for top-ups. Even if you go to my Instagram, I've pinned like a really easy drill that you can use at the start or end of a session. It's an anaerobic drill. It takes 2.5 minutes, okay? But if you do it with maximum intensity, it is certainly enough to maintain your fitness during the season. So in terms of fitness, it can be really short and sharp and intense, or it can be a little bit more long and drawn out. I would highly recommend that you do both. So at one point in your week, there is that really high intensity, repeat sprintability, or anaerobic focus, and it's really, really tough, but it's really short. And in the other part of the week, maybe there's a more aerobic focus, okay? Again, depends what's happening with rugby. If rugby's enough, then fantastic. If not, make sure you're throwing in at the end of the session or another day a top up. So guys, I'm not going into detail on category 3 and 4 programs, okay? But I will say, there is a methods chart here that you can use if you're trying to develop max strength or power, etc. Look at these methods, steal them, use them, implement them into your program. And if you like what you're seeing, write in the comment section something like, thanks, Fraser, that's some good ideas. If you don't like what you see, you'll probably let me know anyway, because that's YouTube, right? Guys, the other thing I wanted to say is about primers. That might be something that's useful for you if you're in category 4, or you've got more say over your training schedule. Primers you can learn more about at rugbystrengthandconditioning.com. I did an article on that on my blog, okay, and there's a bit of a guide in there. Suffice to say that it's a session that helps stimulate the nervous system, and it comes around 6 hours. It can be 6 hours before a session, it can be 24 hours before a session. Some people respond really, really well to it. Some people it doesn't work for. So it's definitely something worth trying and finding out if it works for you. It's actually something we're implementing here at BLR Rugby Club early next year. So this season, but early next year, to discover like, who does it work for here? Does it work for players? Do we see improvements in performance on the day of a game when we do morning training? So something I'll definitely keep you posted on. I'll probably do a video on it at some point. And yeah, something to be aware of that can help influence your performance, which is obviously one of the things that, you know, we want to get from this video, is these programs help you be ready on game day, or again, going back to that, maybe you need player development and thinking long term. Guys, there's another thing you need to watch out for, and that is your speed work. Okay, you must be doing some speed work during your training week. The game alone is not enough to maintain your speed. You can see this in research, I've seen it with the GPS. Like, you need to make sure you have exposure to high speed running, like max effort running, at least once a week. Here, we run 5 flying 50s on a Wednesday. It's that simple. So you go through a rugby warm-up. At the end of the rugby warm-up, I say 5, like there's actually 3 max effort. So you go through the gears on the first and the second, and then there's 3 with adequate rest, where you start at the dead ball area. By the time you get to sort of 50 meters in, you're trying to get to your top speed, and you're holding your top speed probably from the 22 all the way to the halfway line. All right, so flying 50s, really important that fits in somewhere in your week to maintain your speed. Now, if you're a young player and you're doing all this training load, you might not need that. Or if you're an older player and there's, you know, your position requires that there's a lot of, maybe you're a winger and there's kick and chase, or you're doing a lot of that work, okay. But if you're somewhere in between, maybe you're in the back row or second row and you don't have that exposure during the week, make sure you take time to do it. It doesn't take long, all right? 5 to 10 minutes, depending, you know, obviously if you combine it with a warm-up and whatnot. So really important to maintain your speed, you need exposure to speed.
So guys, I promised you a 6-week program, and you have a 6-week program with all the detail that goes into it and all the information that you needed to know to make it successful. Obviously, if you have questions, write to me on Instagram or fill in the comment section below, a question here, a question there, I will get back to you. Remember, you can go to rugbystrengthandconditioning.com, okay, and you'll have a 12-week program. So the first 6 weeks here, and then the next progression on that will be at rugbystrengthandconditioning.com. Now, if you have made it this far in the video, I'm going to give you 25% off that program. Please don't type this in the comment section so other people have to watch the full video to get the discount. I'll give you 25% off. We'll call it code Season 1. Season 1, okay, write that at Rugby Strength and Conditioning in the code when you're at the checkout, and you'll have 25% off. Guys, if you like this video, please let me know with a thumbs up, and share with someone if you think that they might benefit from it as well. It really helps me grow the channel and get more information out to more people. If you haven't done so already, I would highly recommend checking out my pre-season for rugby video, because that has a different way of organising training based on the adaptations that you're looking for, and not necessarily with the constraints of being in the competitive season for rugby. That's all for me, guys. It's been a pleasure. I will see you on the next video. Thank you. Cheers.